Over the last 7 years in Brisbane, myself and my brother Simon have bought more than $300 million worth of investment property for over 1,000 clients throughout Australia and the world. In this video, we've just recently reviewed the entire Brisbane market. We're going to bring you the 10 most affordable suburbs under $600,000 that still have huge amounts of potential for growth, for cash flow, for stability between now and the Olympic Games in Brisbane. Super excited.
Now, for a little bit of context, in Brisbane, there's 5 local government areas and over 400 suburbs that make up the city. So we refined that list down to about 10 that we absolutely love the look of. Now, Benny, why don't we start in the north side of Brisbane, talking through Deception Bay?
Yeah, so D Bay, let's get real, was probably Queensland's biggest shithole of a suburb for the last 30 years, but it's on the up, finally. Also, that's been saying for the last 30 years. This is the most affordable beachside suburb, I reckon, in southeast Queensland right now. It's 30 kilometres directly north of the city. You can buy houses for under $600,000. The vacancy rates at the moment are less than 1%. It is chronically undersupplied. And despite like what I just said a minute ago, I think there's really, really strong potential there. We're seeing huge gentrification, renovations, the start of knockdown and rebuilds, and there's some really, really good schools and infrastructure in surrounding suburbs.
Like the geographical location and the lifestyle factors of D Bay just naturally going to force it to gentrify over time, which we absolutely love about it. But if you track a little bit further north, there's 2 suburbs that we absolutely love the look of and think are super undervalued at the moment, and that is Moray and Cabalcha. So talk me through some of the numbers to those 2 suburbs up further north.
I better be careful talking rubbish about Morayfield because my wife actually grew up there.
Yeah.
She did. So Morayfield's about 40 odd kilometres north of the CBD. It actually has a couple of train stations, a whole bunch of shopping centres, and it's a huge suburb. Like we're talking 30,000 people type thing, maybe even 50,000 between Morayfield and Cabalcha. It is a little bit further away from the city than I would traditionally want to buy, but we are talking about a below 600K price point. Now, there's properties available in Morayfield right now for between 500 and 600K. There's quite a bit of land out there at the moment, which developers are bringing on more and more expensive and nicer homes on. So I think as an area, it's massively gentrified in the last 10 years. There's a high number of sales each year, which means as an investor, if you do sell something, there's going to be someone to sell it to. If you're an investor and you need to release equity, there's generally other properties that have got good valuations that you can get out with as well. At the moment, it's about 44% renters up there, which again is a tiny bit higher than where I'd like to see it. But what I think's happening at the moment, because it's so affordable, many first and second time families are sort of moving that way as the infrastructure gets better, and people have now realised that the sunny coast is less than an hour up the road as well.
Yeah, that's what I love about Morayfield. It is relatively central as well. You've got Sunny Coast, it's like a 40-minute drive away. Bribie Island, that's like a 30-minute drive away. You got the Glasshouse Mountains that are like a 20-minute drive away, plus the Hinterland, which is about a 20-minute drive away. And then the CBD is probably about 45-minute drive. So it is relatively central if you want that sort of rural kind of living setup.
Actually, that's completely right. I forgot to mention, like, there's so many beautiful big acreage blocks and things like that that may be cut up over time, but there's big tracts of, like, conservation land through there too.
Yeah.
But if we move on to the next suburb, 3 kilometres further north, which is Cabalcha, again, like many of these suburbs have had a little bit of a bad reputation, kind of like Maroubra in Sydney, St Kilda in Melbourne, North Melbourne, parts of Western Sydney. It takes time for gentrification to occur. But if I look at somewhere like Penrith, for example, that's 60 to 65 k's from the CBD, and a beautiful home on a nice 600 to 800 block is already selling for the likes of almost $1 million now, then this is 50 cents in the buck.
Absolutely.
Cabalcha's super cheap right now. Like, you can buy it, the average house is 500K. There'd be things selling for below that and obviously well above it. The incomes up there are quite high. They're already at $1,300 a week, which is 60 grand per year per household. Now, what I like about that, if people are earning that sort of money, but the weekly rents are only $400 to $500, it means that rents and property prices can go up and many people living in the area can afford it.
There's no doubt there's some awesome opportunities up there in North Brisbane, but we also love the look of South Brisbane, and there's probably a little bit more opportunity down in South Brisbane. You can get a little bit closer to the city down there in South Brisbane as well in comparison to North for that below $600,000 price point. So let's rattle through some of the awesome suburbs that we like to invest in down there.
You know, it's such a good point, man, because all of Australia went North Brisbane, like they went North Sydney or East Melbourne first.
Yep.
And so North Brisbane is sitting at least a couple of $100,000 above the South right now. Huge opportunity down there. The first suburb that I like is one called Crestmead. Only 25 k's from the city. In the car, you're looking at about a 30 minute drive to the CBD and about a 35-minute drive for a surf on the Gold Coast. So when you put that in a Sydney-Melbourne perspective, it's red hot, surrounded by great schools, great infrastructure, huge amount of extra work going in there between now and the Olympic Games as well. 460K is the average house price. As a business, we like to buy properties there sort of between about that 480 to about 600 at the moment. Remember, when we talk averages here, we're talking about all of the crappy stuff on main roads, cemeteries, schools next to hospitals, the stuff that you don't want to buy. So a lot of these, averages are probably the bottom of the market, and you want to be getting the better quality pocket, the better quality streets, the nicer blocks, the bigger houses and that sort of thing.
And the median is always a little bit delayed as well. They're not getting that information for 3 to maybe 6 months, and knowing what's happened in Crestmead over the last 6 months has been one of the fastest rising markets of Australia in the first half of 2022. So there's always going to be that little bit of disconnect, so you can't get too wedded to those averages.
What I love about Crestmead is the average household income is almost based on the latest census data, $1,500 a week.
Nice. Which
says to me that rents can go up significantly, house prices can go up significantly. Another suburb that I like in the south side is Waterford West, 27 k's from the city. Now, one of the things that Simon and I look at is long term. Now, over the last 50 years, according to Homely, Brisbane has averaged, when you average out the total gains by the number of years, by 9.7% per annum. Waterford West has only gone up by 3.57% in the last 10 years.
Wow.
Which, when you look at Jeremy Shepherd from DSR's data, suburbs that do really, really well in the first 10 years of a cycle do poor in the second, historically. Suburbs that do really poorly in the first half end up catching up and doing better. And you've seen that in Sydney. They call this the ripple effect, the domino effect in Melbourne. It's effectively where you buy just further away than what's already cranked and take advantage of that, being the next affordable area. And that's certainly what's happening in Crestmead right now and Waterford West. Yeah,
it's definitely happening up here in Brisbane. We're seeing that ripple effect unfold in front of our eyes, and you can use that to your advantage to secure a property at a more affordable price, to get a little bit stronger rental return, and, purchase a really high quality investment grade property. So it's beautiful to see that these are starting to heat up a little bit. They are starting to gentrify a little bit, and it'll be interesting to see what these suburbs are like in 10, 20 years time from now.
Absolutely. So the third suburb I like in South Brisbane is one called Bethania. This suburb on paper is absolute gold. It's sitting next to 2 or 3 of the nicer suburbs in the area, great schools, much higher average household income earners, brick tile, slab on ground, like quality houses. The vacancy rate in Brisbane is less than 1% right now as a whole. In this suburb, it's 1/3 of 1%.
Wow.
Which means if you're realistically pricing your rent, you should find a tenant, if not 10 tenants within the first couple of days it goes online. Train station here, 33% renters. According to the Australian Financial Review, they expect the average house price in Brisbane to go from 600K today, or at the start of last year, to around about that maybe even $1.2 million by the Olympic Games. And this is one of those suburbs with a huge amount of upside potential.
Absolutely. And what I love about these opportunities in these suburbs is because we're talking about a below a $600,000 price point, which, we're fortunate enough to talk with 12 to 14 investors every single week, and most of them are looking for properties between the $500,000 to $600,000 range. So great opportunities there with a lot of upside potential moving forward.
Lucky last in South Brisbane. I mean, to be honest, man, there's honestly 25 suburbs that I love in South Brisbane right now, but that might be another video. The last is Baroni Heights, 24 k's from the city, like 1/3% vacancy rates again, huge household incomes, almost $1,500 per week. But what I love most, again, is that historical average, 4.5% in the last 10 to 12 years versus 9.7% a year for the last 50. So again, statistically speaking, potentially undervalued. And what I like about this suburb is there's a real value gap between a shitty 3-bedroom, 1-bathroom home with no garage and a 4-bedroom, 2-bathroom renovated home. And I think for savvy investors, there might be a little bit of upside through manufacturing growth as well.
Now, I know some of those suburbs do have a bit of a stigma about them, but we are talking about the numbers here from an investment perspective, and all of these suburbs represent amazing value. Now, it is a similar situation with the western side of Brisbane where there is some amazing suburbs below that $600,000 price point. Yes, there is a little bit of a stigma around some of these suburbs, but as Brisbane moves through its population growth cycle, we will see these areas begin to gentrify, and we are already starting to see it. So talk me through some of these areas out there in sort of South and West Brisbane.
You know, West Brisbane, man, it's like someone put the blinders on for the last 10 years and said, nobody look there.
Yes.
And all of a sudden, I'm starting to look there and it looks red hot.
Yeah.
To me, the population's expected, according to the ABS, to go from 190,000 people to 400,000 people in the next 10 years.
Wow.
There's a huge military base out there. According to the state government, it might be the place where they put in the first fast line. So train from Ipswich straight to the CBD, which will get commuters there in 22 minutes.
Wow.
University of Southern Queensland's out there as well. There's a suburb out there called Churchill, 34 k's in the city. The average purchase price for a 3 or a 4-bedroom home is $360K.
Far out.
And it would rent for $400 a week right now. Now, while there has been a little bit of a stigma associated with like West Melbourne, West Brisbane, Western Sydney, Western Melbourne and Western Sydney have completely gentrified.
Yep.
And if you look out in West Brisbane, they're beautiful homes. They're beautiful suburbs. There's some of the best school districts in Queensland out there. There's train lines all the way. So for some reason, people have forgotten about this area. The vacancy rate in this area, again, is less than 0.5%. What I love is the average annual price growth is sitting below 4% in many of these suburbs out there too.
Yeah, the locals out there are super house proud and they absolutely love living there, which is something that I really value as an investor as well. But let's talk about East Ipswich as well. Awesome little suburb there, close to the city, out there in the new Ipswich region. So talk through some of those numbers.
Yeah, actually, that's a really important point because the state government and Brisbane City Council have just decided that Ipswich will become the second CBD of Brisbane.
Sort of like Parramatta.
Exactly, the Parramatta of Brisbane. So that's positive. Again, 29 k's in the city, train station, average house price of $380K. If you want a palace, maybe you want to spend $450 to $500K. You know, so much potential out there. On paper, I think in terms of the east coast of Australia, statistically speaking, it's the most undervalued area. Now, I'll get into Bundamba, which is the 10th suburb out in Western Brisbane in a moment. But before I do, when I bought my second property, you know, I completely understand that when we start out as investors, our incomes are generally a little bit lower or our risk profile is lower. Our serviceability, because we don't have equity and rent coming in from properties, is normally a bit lower. And so I couldn't afford in Sydney for my second property at 25 and I went up to the Central Coast. At that time, I bought a suburb called San Remo, which there was an article in the Telegraph in Sydney basically saying, is San Remo the Africa of Australia? It was that bad. It had a whole lot of ice, addiction, plus dealers. At the time, it was 80% or 88% renters.
Wow.
The average household income when I bought was $324 a week, which was Centrelink at the time. And it was considered an absolute ghetto. Now, I bought a 5-bedroom home with a little granny flat out the back for $213K. Over the course of that gentrification in Sydney, not only did the price go to $600K, but 80% of the people now living in the suburb are mums and dads. 20% are renters. There's no housing commission anymore. The average weekly rent is between 500 and 600 a week, and the average house is between 550 and 800K. So when we think about these areas where we've got to start if we're investors, there is so much potential here. None of these suburbs are anything like that one. Like that was your worst case.
Absolutely.
But even that one worked. So Bundamba's 26K in the city, $384,000 average house price. When you think about that, right, in Sydney, that might be somewhere like Gymea. In South Sydney, it might be somewhere like the Hills District in Sydney's 50Ks, 40Ks in the city. In Melbourne, it could be somewhere in like northeast Melbourne. You would be looking at, what do you reckon, at least 800K to about 1.5 million bucks to be that distance in a quality part of Sydney or Melbourne. And we're talking sub 400K. It's insane.
Yeah, the ceiling on these opportunities just look amazing, and it's just really hard not to be able to justify the value in these opportunities.
100%. Train lines, good incomes. So they're 10 of the suburbs that we like. We've got about 60 suburbs that we really, really like in 2022, 2023 in Brisbane. For those of you seriously looking at this market up here, we do offer free one-on-one strategy sessions. Just jump over to www.pumpedonproperty.com and you can book a session in with Simon, myself, or my sister Crystal, and we can talk about where you are today, where you'd like to be in the future. We can give you a full market update on Brisbane, north, south, west, central, and you can take that with a grain of salt. You can go and absolutely smash it on your own, or potentially we can talk about our buyer's agency service where we take on an extremely small number of people each week and help you actually find the right suburb, go and inspect the right property, do the due diligence, introduce you to the team of advisors and end up with a cracking option. All of the suburbs that we're targeting, statistically speaking, are undervalued with incredible potential in the next 10 years. So we wish you all the best either way. Please share this with friends who are looking to buy sub 600K properties in Brizzy. And we wish you all the best, guys. Cheers.
Woo! That's a wrap. That's a wrap. Have a spin.
Yeah.
Oh, sweaty. So sweaty. Oh, that's good. That's so nice. Oh.